Hello, is it working? Here we go. Hi. Okay, I don't love that you said that this was before the fun part. Okay, we're going to have fun. Okay, can we have a little bit of fun, maybe? I'm so honored to be here today. I'm so grateful to be part of this program, and I think it's so exciting that you're doing so much to think about what's coming next. Right now, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get to 23, which is apparently when you start being awesome. That's what I just learned from Jim. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about what I've learned in the 20-something years that I've been applying to college. I have been applying to college over and over again. I told that to a family one time recently, and the mom said, you haven't gotten in? I did get in. I went to Duke. I didn't win a major world award. I got in anyway. But I went to Duke, and all I really wanted to do was to share that opportunity with other young people. So that's what I've always done. I started my career in my alumni admissions office, and I worked there for 5 years. I went to a boarding school in Massachusetts. I worked at a Quaker school in Washington, D.C. A lot of people have heard of because the president's children went there. Our last president's children went there. A few other president's children have gone there over the years. And I've gotten to have this opportunity to talk with students and families about how this process really works. What really counts when you're going through the college application process. So I'm going to ask you guys some questions, and I'd love it if students would answer. And you have to bear with me because I can't really see you. So what do you think counts? What do you think the admissions officers are looking for when they're reading your applications? Anybody have an idea? This, by the way, is the audience participation portion of the program. Yep. Okay, so let me tell you, there are 6 different areas that get rated. See, I didn't want to use a microphone. So when I was in admissions at Duke, we would rate applications in 6 different areas. One of them was the 4.0 thing, right? So one of the things that actually does matter in college admissions, I'm really sorry, Jim. One thing that does matter in college admissions is your grades, right? Your academic achievement matters. Great job. So academic achievement matters, and when they're looking at your grades, they're not just looking at the grades themselves, but they're looking at trends in your grades over time. Do you have any idea what their favorite trend might be? All A's all the time. I love that. What's another good trend? Upwards, right? As your classes get harder and you get more engaged in learning, your grades are going up. Guess which one they don't really love? Plummeting grades. Not a fan, okay? But sometimes there's a blip. Sometimes you've been doing well and there's a little blip. Something went on. You had mono. Somebody in your family was ailing and you were helping them. Something maybe was going on. You got to tell them a little bit about it. But your grades do matter. They're one of those things that's part of the mix. But there are other things that will be part of that evaluation, some of the things that help them figure out what it is that sets you apart, because you are unique and wonderful just like everybody else. Okay, so one thing that does count, that matters, is grades. What's something else? What's something else that they're going to rate and evaluate in your application? Standardized test scores, right? Saturday mornings, filling in bubbles. It's like your favorite thing to do, right? No. It's not the favorite thing to do on a Saturday morning, but we do it. And standardized testing is something that many colleges will evaluate. If standardized testing is not your favorite way to spend a Saturday morning, there are about 900 colleges and universities in the United States that use an alternative to using standardized testing in the admissions process. There's an organization called FairTest. Fairtest.org is the website. And you can do a search for those schools. So there is a way to avoid standardized testing being part of your process, but at most highly selected schools, it's going to be a thing. Okay, so we've talked about 2 things that are numeric so far. We talked about grades and standardized testing. Anything else you think they're going to look at? They're going to evaluate? And can I hear from students? Yes. How well you develop your interest. Okay, when I was at Duke, we called this PQs. Stands for personal qualities. So it's not just the activities that you're involved in, but what you bring to that event, right? Those organizations, those commitments. So it's the way you develop those interests. There is no list in the admissions office of like the right stuff to do. There's no like checklist like, aha, you have worked with the elderly. Check. You walk a dog. Check. You've had a job. Check. There's no right thing that you have to do. They just want to get to know you. And so whatever it is you're doing, they want to hear about it. Everything that you spend time on that you think is important and valuable, that's not eating, sleeping, hanging out with your friends, doing your homework, that you would tell your parents about, that goes in your college application. Okay, so think broadly when you think about developing your interests. It's not just clubs that you've joined or offices you've held, but it may be hobbies and interests that you pursue for yourself. That's what demonstrates what's really important and valuable to you. And that's what the admissions office really cares about. They are actually trying to get to know you because they're trying to figure out what kind of community member you will be at that institution. College admissions is not a reward. It's not a kind of good job, right? You did it, you earned it, you got here. There's not a real meritocracy, which we sort of kind of wish there were. In the end, it's actually kind of this promissory note. We believe you have the potential to make a difference in our community, on our campus, right here, right now, and we think you're going to be pretty great after you graduate too. And a big part of how they figure that out is through how you develop your interests, through extracurricular activities and the personal qualities you bring to them. Okay, so now we talked about one that's not so numbers oriented. All right, we're halfway there. Other things they evaluate. Yes? Essays. I'm going to talk about the essay. We're going to talk a lot about essays, I don't have a lot of time, but I'm going to say very quickly a lot of things that are important about essays. Your essay is your chance to speak to the admissions committee. It's the one time they really get to hear from you and hear what you value and what you think is really important. They think that's really important too. So we're going to talk about that one a little bit more in a second. 4 down, 2 more to go. Course rigor, thank you. Absolutely. Curriculum choice, right? The brave thing that you do in just a few days when you sit to these really hard classes. It's not just the grades that you've earned, but the classes that you've earned them in. So that's a two-pronged piece. When we're looking at your transcript, we're looking both at curriculum choice and at academic achievement. Both things count independently, even though they are kind of linked. Okay, one more. Do you need a hint? Is anyone else going to say nice things about you in your application? Recommendations, right. So not every school requires recommendations, but the most selective schools will require 3. 1 from your counselor, that's the person who writes on behalf of your school, and then 2 teachers that you pick to write your recommendations. A lot of people think recommendations, that's out of my hands, right? I can't write it for them. I kind of wish I could, but I can't. You make a choice about who's going to write for you, and that has an influence on what your application will convey about you. So think carefully about who you want to ask. They would love for you to ask teachers who've taught you later in high school, more the person you're going to be as you enroll in their college. They'd love to hear from people who know how different parts of your brain work. So they'd love to have one recommendation from the world of the humanities and letters, English, social studies, world language, and they'd love to have another from the analytical side of your brain, math and science. Even though one of those is probably a strength for you and one of those might be a little bit more of a weakness, they still want to hear about both because both parts of your brain are coming to their campus and they want to hear how those things interact. Okay, so that's the way that highly selective schools are going to evaluate your application, categories that they're sort of looking through. A lot of that stuff is going to be said and done when you get to the early part of your senior year and you're actually applying to college, right? You've chosen your classes for the most part. You can maybe like do a little swindle negotiation in the registrar's office in a couple days, like, please, can I be in this class? But it's mostly set. By the time you're applying, you've earned most of the grades that they're going to see. That's the grade you got in that class with that teacher and that attitude, right? It's there. It's in print. You've made the impressions that you were going to make on the teachers who are writing your recommendations. You've gotten as involved as you wanted to in organizations and you're stepping into leadership roles, hopefully as you're a senior and thinking about the legacy that you want to leave at your high school and the things that you've done and the things you hope someone else will continue. A lot of that is said and done when it gets time to actually filling out the application form. The thing that's not written yet is your essay. So this is your chance when you're in your senior year to really focus on telling your story and making that commitment. A lot of people ask me about do's and don'ts on essays. The only don't I can really give you is please don't write about a pet dying. That's the only essay topic that I've never seen anybody do well. But anything else is up for grabs. There's no right or wrong topic. I'm going to help you figure out how to get to what your essay ought to be about. Little homework for you. I want you to write down for yourselves the 5-ish qualities you want your application to convey about you. These are qualities of self, things you're proud of about yourself, not accomplishments, but the qualities that led you to that, perhaps, accomplishment. So it might be that you're proud that you're intelligent, right? It might be that you're proud of your athleticism. You might be proud of your commitment to your family. You might be proud of your kind of fiery, independent spirit. Whatever those things are, I want you to write a list of them for yourself. And then think about the things we talked about that are part of your application. Curriculum choice, academic achievement, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, standardized testing, which doesn't really tell much of anything except what you did on a Saturday morning, and what doesn't match up, what you can't see, whichever quality you can't see being revealed in another part of that application, that should be the essence of your essay. That should be the message that your essay is trying to convey. Do you believe me? Okay. So that's your homework assignment, and it's going to net you an essay that only you could have written, which is the greatest essay you could possibly write. Your essay, of course, should have good grammar and punctuation and all that stuff. Somebody else probably ought to eyeball it before it goes in. But don't let someone else give you a little too much advice. Even someone like me who gives advice about it for a living. You need to make sure that it's your voice. The easiest way to test for that is to read your essay out loud before you submit it. If you stumble, those are the places where your very helpful and loving parents might have gotten their little fingers in there a little too much. Or it might be that you got a little too deep in the thesaurus and you're using some words that are not in your natural vocabulary. That's the time to edit that stuff out and put in what you really would say, your real voice, your real message. So to figure out the topic, you're going to spend some time thinking about your qualities and what part of your application you need to be responsible for conveying. You're going to make sure that you do some good quality writing. You're going to let someone else make sure that it looks okay in the end. But in the end, the essay, the essence of the essay should be yours and belong to you. There are many different prompts on college applications. A lot of college applications are going to go live on Tuesday. So if you're a rising senior, you probably know that. The Common Application is live on Tuesday, we hope. I mean, last year it was 2 weeks late, so we'll see. But they have already given you the college essay prompts, if you've seen those online. And there's a list of 7, and the last one is the topic of your choice. And that is to say that these colleges don't need an answer to a question, right? They don't need to know who influenced your life the most. They don't need to know about a time that you failed and how you overcame that. They don't have to know that in order to know you. So you know best what you want to write about, so feel free to use the freedom of the topic of your choice, because it's the guts of your essay, the message that you're conveying, that's the really important part. So try not to get too hung up on the questions. I give that advice in particular because it was advice I really needed when I was 17. When I was applying to college, the application question at Vanderbilt was, if you could only bring 3 things into your room to introduce yourself to your roommate, what would they be and why? This garnered a lot of discussion among my friends and I at the lunchroom and all the time. We did not yet have the internet, and so we had to actually talk to each other live and in person. We didn't have phones to chat. But we talked a lot about, what are you going to put in your essay? What are you thinking about? And I kept mine secret and private while my friends talked about their teddy bears and their, trophy from soccer and a photo album to show their family. I kept quiet because I knew I had the very best idea. Do you want to know what it was? I said, I'm going to bring a half gallon of Breyer's mint chocolate chip ice cream and 2 spoons. Those are my 3 things, because I think the best way you get to know someone is by sitting down and talking to them and sharing a meal, which, Breyer's mint chocolate chip ice cream for me constitutes a meal. It's really good. I had a great answer to that essay. Do you know what? The rest of the essay stunk. I paid so much attention to trying to answer the question that I didn't do a great job writing. And the reason why I can still tell you about that essay is because I keep it in my office as a reminder that I was 17 once, and I was not necessarily a brilliant writer, but I had a lot of potential, and I was really lucky that some admissions officers were willing to hear my story completely and fully and take a chance on me. They will take a chance on you if you take the chance to let them get to know you. So enjoy that college application process and the opportunity that it gives you to get to know yourself. Because wherever you go, you're going to create your own unique experience at your university. No one else will take the exact classes you take. No one else will have the exact relationships you do. No one else will take on the leadership roles you do. You will have a unique experience at your institution. And that experience will be fantastic if you've known yourself well enough to know what you want to do and accomplish while you're in school. So I wish you good luck with it. I would be glad to take questions if I'm allowed to, but I think you are short. You have to get to your, Can I take questions? I'm allowed to take 2 questions. I won't tell anyone if you ask me 3. Yes. Okay. So the question is, how creative can a student be on their essay? And specifically saying about maybe a poem or a song. Have any of you heard of zine? Has anyone heard of zine? Nobody? Okay. Go on the interwebs and find zine. So it's Zeemee, and it's a company that was started by some 20-somethings who wanted college applications to be more than just kind of these cut and dried pieces of paper. And Zeemee gives you a chance to be more creative with your application. So you can do like a little video snippet, you can do a song, you can do a magic trick. And there are several colleges that are invite students to link their application to a Zeemee account so they can show and demonstrate those things. So there is actually like a real way that you're invited to do that. I think how creative you can be in the essay depends on how creative you are naturally as a person. Here's my advice about essays. If you're funny, be funny. If you're not funny, this is not a good time to try, okay? This is not a good time to try something completely new. It's really hard, especially to convey humor in the written form, right? You don't know, you can't raise your hand and be like, I'm being sarcastic now, right? You don't get to say it, so the joke gets lost. The same is true if you're using a more creative form of communication. It can come across as a gimmick instead of as a genuine part of you. So if the rest of your application is talking about how creative a person you are, then I expect your essay is going to reveal that too. But if no one else has seen that side of you and it's not something you've really developed out, in coursework or in extracurricular activities, then it probably is going to be kind of trying too hard to be unique or to stand out. You can stand out just by being yourself, not by the format of your application. So that would be my suggestion. Another question?
So you've emphasized the essay, but besides the essay, out of the other 6 things, which one do you think is the most important?
Okay, any admissions officer you ask better answer this, because otherwise they're not telling the truth. The single most important piece of paper, I get it's not paper anymore, but I'm old, so let me have it. The single most important piece of paper in your application is your transcript. There's nothing else that's more important, which conveys 2 things that are really critical in that list of 6 we talked about: the curriculum choice, the classes you're taking, and the grades you've earned in them. It also tells the admissions office where you're coming from, which sets their expectations a little bit, right? So if you come from a rural school that doesn't have any AP classes and 35% of the students are heading to college, I'm going to have different expectations about what your application and your recommendations might look like than I would from a student who is at a very competitive, prestigious high school in suburban Atlanta where they have tons of opportunities to take more advanced classes. You're going to set the expectations a little bit differently. So the most important thing will always be your transcript. But relax, because some of that's kind of said and done, and take the time to focus on your essay when you're actually working on your application when you get to that point. But if you're in 9th grade, I just said that your grades and the classes you take are important. Your parents are, going to thank me later. Any last question? Yeah. Sure. Okay, so a question about geographic diversity in the admissions process and quotas or limits from certain high schools. So there was a time in the history of American education when there were quotas at the most highly selective schools, and they would not admit more than a certain percentage of students, for example, who were Jewish. And so there was incredible discrimination at that time. Nobody does that anymore because that's not fair. And college admissions is not fair, certainly, but it is trying to provide access and opportunity to students to give them the opportunity to pursue their education and their dreams. So an admissions office absolutely could take every single student who applies to them from any one high school if each of those students was compelling in their own way. It is unlikely that 20 kids from one high school applying to a school, say like Duke, are all going to be kind of offering something different and amazing to the institution, right? But if you've got a ballerina in there, and you've got a scientist, and you've got an aspiring theologian, and you've got somebody who's doing a lot with social justice, right? If you've got a lot of students who are offering different things, you could be drawn to each of them. So it's not held against you that other people from your high school are applying, and you're not in direct competition with them for spots from your high school. In terms of geographic diversity, colleges want to be interesting places. It's part of the reason why you pick them to apply to, because you think, I'm going to meet such interesting people there. So there is a bias in the admissions process to try and create some diversity within the student body. And that's, you can kind of parse that a lot of different ways. Geography is one of them. Charlie Deacon, who's the Dean of Admissions at Georgetown, with whom I traveled very frequently, said he always wants his senators. He wants 2 students from every state in the union. So if you want to go to Georgetown, may I recommend that the winters in North Dakota are not nearly as bad as you've heard. But if you really want to go to Georgetown, feel free. Charlie's going to try and find you. To talk about Emory in particular, you've got kind of a funny thing going on there, because you think a lot of people from Atlanta are applying to Emory, and that might be challenging, right? They would like to have more students from other parts of the country and, frankly, more parts of the world. And they do, actually. The international recruitment at Emory has increased dramatically, and that was part of what I was hired to help read those applications when I was an admissions reader there. But there's also, for every private school, a desire to kind of take care of your hometown. And so there is a real emphasis in making sure that you make good and thoughtful decisions in your own community. So I don't think it's necessarily a negative that you're close to the school, because they know you well and they want to treat their community well. So I am so grateful for this opportunity and for your good questions. You're going to get a lot better advice from the students who are coming in to do your student panel. But I appreciate your thoughtfulness about this process. If you want to go to college and your parents want you to go to college, you're going to go. I don't know where. I don't know what little rodent you're going to cheer for, but I know that you'll go, and I know you can do something amazing. Good luck.
Thank you, Ms. Geography.